Actor Jussie Smollett inside a Chicago courtroom and will enter his plea any moment now. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning at home, at work, on your mobile device, wherever we find you today, right? That hearing will focus on the 16 felony charges handed down by a grand jury for allegedly lying to police about being the target of a racist and homophobic attack. Smollett's attorney saying that the judge's decision allowing cameras inside the courtroom will only help their case.
There has been a lot of misinformation in this case that has been presented as fact and evidence against Mr. Smollett, which is demonstrably false. We welcome the cameras in the courtroom so that the public can immediately see the actual evidence and what we believe is actually going to be the lack of evidence against Mr. Smollett. And we look forward to complete transparency and the truth coming out.
And that's that. Matt Finn, more from the courthouse now. Hey, Matt, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Once again, Jussie Smollett arrived to this courthouse flanked by some of his siblings and their security. He walked by the media and he had no comment. Right now, Jussie Smollett and his team are inside of a courtroom. And first up, a trial judge will be assigned to Smollett's case. And then Smollett and his team are expected to relocate to that particular judge's courtroom, where Smollett is expected to enter a plea on those 16 new felony counts of lying to police. Smollett's team tells us that he will enter a not guilty plea on those 16 felony charges. A judge has ruled that a camera is allowed inside of the courtroom today because Smollett's team alleges there have been so many false leaks in this case, particularly according to Chicago police, that they say they welcome cameras in the courtroom so that the public can hear what they consider is the truth. Mark Garagos, that high-profile criminal defense attorney that is representing Jussie Smollett, was scheduled to be here today, but now Jussie Smollett, crisis manager, tells us that Garagos is not here because of a scheduling conflict. We do expect to hear from one of the defense attorneys from Garagos' law firm after this morning's hearing, so we will update you with what the attorneys have to say after this morning's court proceedings. Bill, Sandra.
Thank you, Matt. Stand by there. Matt Finn in Chicago. We'll watch it from here. Thank you, sir.
I'm running to serve you as the next president of the United States of America. The only way for us to live up to the promise of America is to give it our all and to give it for all of us. We are truly now, more than ever, the last great hope of Earth.
Oh.
Well, that happened this morning. He released that video formally announcing that he is entering the already crowded field of Democrats running for president, Beto O'Rourke. And here he is just a few moments ago speaking in Iowa to a crowd there. Big news as the field grows bigger. And
yes, it does. Many anticipated this move after his run that many consider successful, despite the fact that he lost to Ted Cruz in the state of Texas. A lot of young people are drawn to him and his level of energy, so we're going to see how he does, you know, as we move on in this Democratic primary.
Says he intends to run a very positive campaign, and actually I'm reminded, looking back at this video from a few moments ago, Bill, he was already taking on the Green New Deal and touting the benefits of that and taking on any of the critics who have emerged in the wake of the debut of the Green New Deal. So Beto O'Rourke formally in the race.
So what do we think about it? Our A-team, Mark Lauder, Director of Strategic Communications for Trump 2020. Hugo Gurdon, Editorial Director for the Washington Examiner. Gentlemen, hello to both of you.
Good morning.
What do you do? Did we learn enough about Beto's positions when he ran that race against Ted Cruz?
I think we did. I mean, this is a candidate who has openly embraced tearing down our border walls, decriminalizing coming into our country illegally. I would welcome him to the race. It's not a Democratic Party race. It's a race to the left. And by the way, I mean, we should, in the spirit of the season, wish a happy St. Patrick's Day to Robert Francis O'Rourke.
Sounds like a Trump tweet, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, rather, yeah.
A little bit, right? What do you think?
Well, look, Beto is, I mean, his positions are fairly clear in the broad spectrum of things. He's the left winger. He supports the Green New Deal. As was just noted, he wants to tear down the wall, let alone build up. The wall is popular in Texas, support for it for 48%, and that's one of the questions about his entry, whether or not he can flip Texas. But I think the main thing is he is the liberal media's candidate. They see him as the second coming of Bobby Kennedy. You know, I was watching one of the other channels this morning, and they were wowed and absolutely gushing over him, saying how extraordinary and effective it was that he got the cover of the Vanity Fair magazine. It was their gift to him. He is their candidate. He's the candidate of the left.
Do you have to go far as back as Bobby Kennedy? A lot of people think this is like Barack Obama. Well, and the way he started.
No, and that's a very good point. I mean, the truth is he has got charisma. He is appealing. He failed in the Senate, but he's the one that, you know, about a few weeks ago, the Washington Examiner ran a story talking about Joe Biden having some problems with supporting segregation in the 1970s. Very significantly, I think, the Washington Post took up that story and sort of basically repeated it just recently. And I take that as the left-wing media's shot to Biden not to get into the race. They want someone young. They want young blood. They're really wowed by Beto.
Just looking through that Vanity Fair article, which was an interesting choice to formally make your announcement that you're running for president. In that piece, he talks about wanting a more optimistic approach, one that doesn't let the president define the terms, Mark. And he said that he's going to spend the next 24 hours, as we just saw him doing there in Iowa, carefully steering allies to his idea of staging an upbeat march for truth, which would just happen to star El Paso's best counter-argument to Donald Trump himself.
It all sounds great. I mean, when you come out on day one, you're endorsing the Green New Deal, which just earlier this week, America's largest labor union, the AFL-CIO, no friend of Republicans, generally speaking, at the top, came out to warn Congress that this is going to cost millions of blue-collar Americans their jobs, their families' livelihoods. We all know that many blue-collar workers actually support President Trump, but when labor leaders are coming out and slamming the Green New Deal as bad for jobs, bad for their members, that's a bad sign for Democrats.
Jessica Tarloff joins our conversation, too. Jessica, good morning to you. Nothing says blue-collar worker like a piece in Vanity Fair and a photo shoot with Annie Leibovitz now, right?
Absolutely. It worked for JFK. But I think that if you look at the substance of the article, what was most important to me there is when he said, I don't actually prepare before I go out there. I just speak from the heart and what comes to me. And I think that right now the Democratic Party is looking for people who can beat Donald Trump first and foremost. And there's a lot of preparation that needs to go into that to get out there for that kind of race. The Democratic primary is going to be incredibly difficult to get through. And I feel like before Joe Biden gets in or officially gets out, we can't really know what's going on. A lot of people are going to be moving around with their support if Biden is in there, including independents, moderates, and more liberal Republicans who aren't big fans of Donald Trump.
To further set this up, here's some of O'Rourke's policy positions. Mark, I know you mentioned a few, Hugo. Here they are. Anti-border wall, voted against ICE, voted against Kate's law, voted against Trump tax cuts, supports single-payer health care, voted against sanctioning Iran, called law enforcement the new Jim Crow. There's some interesting sound from Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, this morning, was weighing in in his announcement video, sitting next to his wife. He said he was born to do this. Newt Gingrich responded.
I think that Lincoln only had one term in the House and lost the Senate race and ended up as an amazing president. Maybe that'll happen to Beto O'Rourke, but I somehow doubt it. I love the line, I think it's in the Vanity Fair piece, where he says, I was born
to do this.
I thought there's a certain ego illusion here that the planet had that magic moment and Beto O'Rourke showed up.
The truth is, most of these politicians running for the White House feel the same way.
Yeah,
it's their moment in time.
It's their moment. This is the most important election of the lifetime, just like the last one and the one before that. And yeah, he feels he's born to it. And I think that actually, that sort of the privileged background and the sort of sense almost of entitlement with which he enters the race is probably going to be one of the things that put people off.
Nothing like setting the bar high, huh? Abraham Lincoln.
He is a very sparkly, exciting candidate. What he accomplished in Texas, I know he fell short, but coming within 3 points of Ted Cruz there is something that took the country by storm. He has a lot of very serious backers. David Plouffe from Barack Obama's team is with him. A lot of former Obama staffers. This is their guy. They were waiting to see if he got in before they went to a Kamala Harris, before they looked at whether Joe Biden was going to be in or not, and a number of other people. I think what he will do is he will sap some of the support from Bernie Sanders. So those are kind of running more in the center line. We'll be happy to see that happen. But I wanted to highlight something else in the interview I thought was important. He said, I'm well aware of the fact that I'm a white guy and that isn't reflective of where the party is or where the country is going. So I'll make sure to staff up with diverse faces. And so my administration and my team would reflect the country. There is an ongoing conversation within the Democratic Party about whether we need to be represented by a woman, by a minority person. And Beto O'Rourke is kind of stepping right into that. At least he's acknowledging it. But that conversation will race. And I also want to highlight Mayor Pete Buttigieg, I might have butchered his name, did exceptionally well in his CNN town hall this weekend. He's another young, very exciting candidate. And it'll be interesting, for me at least, to see how people line up on a Beto versus
We're going to have a long time to discuss this. I'm going to quickly get on this college admission scandal because this is, it's consumed the attention of the country. Go ahead and play Senator Kennedy. This is a comment from last night, I do believe, with Ed Henry. What he talked about, the chuckleheads. The chuckleheads that are, paying all this money to get into college. Betsy DeVos was already talking about it, too, about students need to be considered on their merit. How are we to, Wall Street Journal, here it is, here's the headline. The college admissions racket, universities and more innocent victims in this scandal. Hugo, what about this?
Everyone has known for a long time that this is rigged. What this scandal shows, of course, is that the people who are rich enough to pay $500,000 bribes are trying to give themselves yet an extra edge even over the privileged class. But one of the things that I really noted about this is that the real fear was that these kids would not otherwise get in. There was no fear that once they were in, they would fail, which suggests that the college education is not challenging kids, students, nearly as much as it should be, and that the $50,000 to $80,000 that people are paying just for their tuition could be a waste of money.
Seems like it's just the tip of the iceberg.
I was at a dinner last night in Washington, D.C. It was with a lot of media folks, and we were kind of commenting. This is one of those few stories that it's not partisan. Everyone is outraged by it. It's actually, in a way, it's uniting the country together in their opposition and their outrage to what we're seeing these liberal Hollywood elites do and abusing that privilege beyond what they already have financially.
One big part of this story we have not discovered yet is how the university respond on this and whether or not there were people at the school who were in on it.
Well, some of them.
I think there are 33 students that are currently in school who have benefited from the program. It's not a liberal Hollywood problem. They're just making Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin the face of the scandal, but there's, the head of TPG, there are a number of people, Republicans and Democrats. It's not a partisan issue.
Thanks to all three of you. $1 million bail. Match that.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Jess.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Hugo.
For each parent.
Got a Fox News alert now. Colorado blasted by what they call a bomb cyclone. Powerful system of strong winds and heavy snow. National Guard helping rescue stranded drivers. That storm making its way to the Midwest. Lisa Cunha is live on that story from Denver today. What happened there, Lisa? How are you guys doing?
Hi, good morning, Bill. Well, we made it. Colorado Governor Jared Polis has declared a state of emergency in the aftermath of this bomb cyclone, which sounds terrifying. And what it is, it's an extreme and rapid drop in atmospheric pressure, and it creates those really dangerous winds that you were mentioning. 96-mile-per-hour winds recorded at Denver International Airport yesterday, where 1,400 flights were canceled yesterday and another 600 today. It's been a mess for travelers on the road and those attempting to fly.
Got on it, backed away from the gate, and they said, nope, winds are too high and we can't de-ice the plane, so they pulled back in and made us get off.
So, of course, hundreds of people had to sleep at the airport. For the fourth time since it's opened, DIA closed down all of its runways due to the weather. Conditions were so bad and the accidents so many, hundreds of drivers abandoned their vehicles on the interstates. Jackknife semi-trucks prompted closures. A Colorado State Patrol Corporal, Daniel Groves was his name. He was killed while helping someone in a car that had slid off the highway. He was hit by another driver who lost control of his car. XL reports 200,000 homes and businesses had their power knocked out. Crews were out this morning trying to get many of those downed and damaged power lines up. And Bill, schools were closed in many places in Wyoming and Colorado. Bill?
Lisa Cunha, thanks. All out there.
Fox News alert from the Hill. A new GOP showdown with the president could be taking shape as the Senate begins debating the emergency resolution.
Watching that vote quite carefully. Today, also new transcripts from the former FBI attorney Lisa Page are now public. Once again, raising questions about the Obama Justice Department's handling of the Clinton email matter. We're going to talk about that with our headliner today. Principal Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gitley is from the North Lawn on deck. Next, coming up.
Did they short-circuit the Clinton email investigation because they wanted her to win, and they knew if they charged her, she might lose?
Senate debating right now a measure to reject President Trump's declaration of a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. That vote expected later today. The debate continues there on the floor. Let's get straight to our headliner, Hogan Gidley, Principal Deputy White House Press Secretary. Have you talked to the president this morning, Hogan?
I have not talked to the president yet this morning.
Set this up for us. What are the expectations for today and the president's declaration of a national emergency, and what happens in the Senate?
Well, listen, the president is literally using powers granted by Congress to enforce laws passed by Congress. This is well within his constitutional duty, and Congress is still unhappy for some reason. Make no mistake, this vote today, if they oppose the president, then they stand in opposition to the American people, to American communities, and to safety and security, because that's what this measure does. For 40 years, Congress has had the opportunity to fix our laws and protect our people. They have not. The border has gotten worse. Drugs are pouring across at record numbers. The exploitation of children and women who are often raped and often assaulted on that dangerous journey northward. And the Democrats' only solution is to say open borders for all. In fact, what they really want to do is legalize illegal immigration. It makes no sense, and this vote today draws a clear line in the sand of which party and which president actually stands for the American people, Hogan, and those who stand for those who are here illegally and unlawfully.
If it passes, there could be several Republicans, maybe 5 or 6, half a dozen who vote with them. Will the president veto that, yes or no?
He has said many times he would, and we expect him to do that.
Have you had conversations with Republicans who have noted publicly that they will vote yes? Which would be a rebuke to the White House and the commander-in-chief?
Look, there are several here at the White House who have conversations every day with those on the Hill. The president has engaged a little bit with some of those who have expressed some concern. But listen, this is something clearly outlined in the Constitution that other presidents have used 58 times. The only reason they don't want to give him the authority is because it's Donald Trump himself. The fact is he can do this, he should do this, the American people need it, and they deserve it. There will be a few defections, we expect that. I understand some people who are gun-shy considering what Barack Obama did with his pen and cell phone. He literally used his office to try and create new laws. The president is trying to use his office to enforce the law, which is what it's supposed to do as outlined in our U.S. Constitution.
A beautiful scene playing out there behind you. I assume that's in preparation to welcome the Prime Minister of Ireland a short time from now, Hogan.
Absolutely. We have the green on today. A lot of folks at the White House do in honor of that visit. It looks like the color guard is just amazing, and they're doing an incredible job setting up for that later in the day.
Sticking with this subject, we know what the president has said this morning on Twitter. And he said this: a big national emergency vote today by the United States Senate on border security and the wall, which is already under major construction. I am prepared to veto, if necessary. The southern border is a national security and humanitarian nightmare, but it can be easily fixed. Has the president been reaching out to members of his own party this morning on this?
I'm not aware of any calls he's made this morning. Listen, our teams are in constant communication at the staff level and with those who plan to cast this vote today. The fact is, we know what's at stake here, and it's the safety and security of the American people. Lives are at risk. We see needless deaths every year, senseless deaths every year, and quite frankly, deaths that are 100% preventable. All we have to do is secure our borders. We've seen so much heartache and so much hurt and pain across this country by people who come to this country illegally. And let's not pretend for 1 second that this country isn't the most generous on the globe as it relates to immigration. We allow 1.1 million people to come to this country every year the right way. We cannot be responsible for those who come here illegally and unlawfully, and that's what Democrats want at every level. They are now the party of open borders, and they have to own that.
3 more questions, 3 more topics. Lisa Page, it appears House Republicans have gotten her to admit that the Department of Justice told them to shut down the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails. What has the president told you about that?
It's incredible. It is another example of what the president has been saying all along, and more proof that he has been correct the entire time. He has said that this is a hoax, it is a witch hunt, it has been fabricated. At some of the highest levels now, the proof comes out. At the highest levels of the DOJ and the FBI, they worked against Donald Trump and for Hillary Clinton. We expect the American people to be outraged by this, because when you can weaponize the largest law enforcement agency in the country against an American citizen, everyone should be outraged and everyone should be deeply concerned by that. This president has been clear about what has happened, and now every piece of evidence that comes out proves it furthermore that he was right.
There's a couple of big things happening this morning, also including Roger Stone appearing in court. We saw him arrive earlier. This is a former Trump associate. He's going before the same judge as Paul Manafort yesterday, where he received an additional prison sentence. Roger Stone entering the court. What is the president saying about this?
Oh, nothing. We've had a lot of conversations in the last few days, and I've heard him not mention Roger Stone one time. I mean, listen, this has nothing to do with the president. It's another attempt by the left and many in the mainstream media to tether Donald Trump to somebody who's done something wrong on their own time with no connection or coordination with Donald Trump. And that's what this is about. The president has done nothing wrong, but to try and link these two together is just ridiculous.
Judge Jackson apparently set the trial date for November 5th to begin for pretrial conference. September 17th was what we expected in the fall. Do you have any hunch that the Mueller report is about to be made public?
I do not, and I would not. We've been 100% cooperative with that investigation, given over millions of pieces of paper, countless hours in cooperation. But we expect what happens with the result is the same thing the president has said. This is a witch hunt. It is a hoax. The proof and the result will actually bear that out. And look, you can tell what's going on Capitol Hill. If you want to look for a tell, check with the Democrats, because they are terrified that this 2-year hoax that they've tried to perpetrate on the American people is about to come to bear and prove them to be completely radical, completely wrong, and show that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. All he's doing now is coming to this White House and righting all of the wrongs, correcting all of the ills of the previous administration, blowing up our economy to make it best in the world, fixing unemployment for all groups, women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and they don't like it. And now they're understanding that they could have been taken in by the whole hoax themselves, and they're going to be made to look quite foolish at the end of this.
How's the White House preparing for that? How's the president preparing for the release of that?
Well, look, we're not really preparing for it per se, because the exoneration we expect is forthcoming. The president's done nothing wrong. He said it many times, and we expect that when Mr. Mueller does put his report out, that it'll prove everything the president said,
well,
just like the evidence is showing now.
The speculation was that the Manafort case has been managed as of yesterday. Andrew Weissman, a top Mueller prosecutor, is now going back to NYU here in New York City. The speculation was that once all that happens, that the pieces are lining up for Mueller to reach his conclusion. Do you buy into that, or do you have any insight to add to that?
Right, Bill, I've had so many reporters come into my office and say it's going to be this day. Then that day passes, and someone else comes in and says, no, we know it's going to be this day. We don't know. We expect it to come out whenever it's completed, but when it is, we expect the result to be exactly what we've told the American people. The president's done nothing wrong, and we expect his exoneration to be forthcoming, and the Democrats to be made to look quite foolish and, quite frankly, ridiculous for perpetrating a lie on the American people for this long.
Well, you know, right now the House is voting on this non-binding resolution to publicize the Mueller report. Does the president think that this report should be made public?
I haven't spoken with him about that, but I sure wish the House would come together and vote on a resolution or the bill put forth by Republicans that would actually protect children who've been born from abortions after they've been removed from the mother's womb. I wish they'd take time doing that to stand up for life at all phases, as opposed to focusing on some phony witch hunt. I mean, this is ridiculous, and it shows exactly what Democrats said they wouldn't do, they're doing. They came in, and so many of them said they wanted to work with the president and get things done for infrastructure and health care, and instead they're moving on all these radical ideas. Focus on life and focus on moving this country forward in the future, and that's how we succeed as a nation together.
Beto O'Rourke is now in the game for the Democratic primary. What's the president think about that?
Well, first of all, you pronounced it wrong. It's Robert Francis. That's number one. Number two, we don't care who gets in the race. The fact is the president's going to win re-election. I can't talk too much about the election. As you know, the Hatch Act looms. But I can tell you the president stands for the American people. He's done that the entire time. And now Democrats, writ large, have to answer for their new set of policies, which is making America socialist, standing for people, those who are born and then killed outside the womb. They want that to be the norm. And they also are standing for a Green New Deal that would absolutely destroy this economy, ruin people in poverty across the world who rely on fossil fuels, and would destroy American lives.
Sounds like a campaign. Just to follow on that, you answered that question by calling him Robert Francis. Is that how the president will refer to him?
Well, he's called him that before on the campaign trail, and why wouldn't he? That's his name.
Sorry, I'm just getting something in my ear there. But Hogan, this is a big day for the president, obviously awaiting the Prime Minister of Ireland there behind you. We saw the preparations in place. How's the day shaping up for the president? You know, he's been tweeting a bit this morning. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes. We have a lot of court appearances, Roger Stone, Paul Manafort yesterday. It's a busy day. It's a busy week, Hogan. What's the president's plans?
Well, look, I'm sure he'll talk to reporters today. There's going to be a pool spray in the Oval Office with the Prime Minister of Ireland, and the president's the most accessible president in history, taking questions pretty much several days a week, whether it's on the way to Marine One in the Oval Office, and he'll address all these topics today. He's not afraid of anybody. His message is strong, and you'll see that today.
On the topic of Boeing, what more can you add from the order being grounded yesterday? How long would that last?
Nothing really to add. I mean, listen, the president had a good conversation with the acting FAA administrator and also Secretary Chow on the matter. New data came to light, new information came to light, and the president made the decision out of the safety and security precautionary measures for the American people. Let's ground the flights until further notice, and when we have an announcement on that, we'll let you know. But right now, that's what's paramount to this president, is to make sure the American people are safe, and that's why he made the move that he made.
Right. Hogan Gidley at the White House for us on a busy day. We appreciate your time, Hogan.
Thank you, Hogan.
Absolutely, thanks.
10:30 here in New York. Another alert now on two major courtroom hearings we're watching. Roger Stone, federal court in Washington, just learning a moment ago that trial begins in November. Actor Jussie Smollett set to face a judge in Chicago. What we expect to happen inside his courtroom. A range of felony counts against him. We'll take you there live. Coming up.
Fox News alert, former Trump associate Roger Stone is in court right now, where he will be going before the same judge as yesterday Paul Manafort went before for his prison time. His trial date was just announced. Roger Stone's a few moments ago, set to begin this November 5th. For more on all this, let's bring in Mercedes Colwin, a Fox News legal analyst. Mercedes, good morning.
Good morning.
Could perhaps what we saw happen yesterday in the courtroom with Paul Manafort foreshadow what could happen here?
What's interesting, because Manafort's lawyer has already been very public about how aggressive, unusually aggressive, this particular judge is. And that's something that he spoke about yesterday. So we could see that. One of the biggest concerns the defense attorneys had today regarding Stone is whether or not he would be held in contempt of the gag order. The judge was very clear the last time they appeared before court. You are not, Mr. Stone, you're not to discuss this case publicly. The judge's concern was somehow that the public would be influenced and these prospective jurors would be influenced
Looks
somehow.
like for the moment, Judge Jackson has put that to the side. Just reading Jake Gibson's note here. You see that, Sandra, right? Stone is signing a court order about the conditions of his release. There was some argument about the beginning of the proceeding about when Stone knew about a paperback edition of the book that was being published. And then it jumps down, talking about the gag order, which would have been a violation, apparently. Yep. The judge put that aside for now and went forward with getting a schedule set, which would be November.
November. It would be great. I mean, the other argument that's going to be the defense attorney is going to have to think about whether or not Stone can get a fair trial and whether he should at least contemplate moving the trial to another jurisdiction. But given the publicity surrounding this case, it would be hard to imagine where they could possibly move the case.
So he's signing that new court order now. He should be leaving the courthouse shortly. You expect him to make any comments before?
Well, not at that. I'm sure that judge admonished both sides to keep quiet.
All right, let's move on to Jussie Smollett.
We're going to find out that together, aren't we? Watching that
in a few minutes. Appearing in court in Chicago. The judge will likely ask Smollett to enter a plea. The cameras will be rolling. It won't be live. We're going to get playback of that in the courtroom. His team made the case to have the cameras rolling. Why do you think that was?
I always thought that was so foolish. I mean, frankly, you don't need cameras in the courtroom. I actually, most of my practice is in federal court where their cameras are not permitted. But when you have the cameras, you can start to become sort of a circus.
Why do you think the judge allowed it?
The judge could rule on it, but I probably assume that she
why
could
did the
control
defense
it.
attorney accept it?
Well,
why would she argue on behalf of her client that this is a good thing, unless you're looking for more attention?
Or you're looking for some sort of circus atmosphere where she thinks that transparency, but transparency at this stage, he's going to go in. We already know, we've already foreshadowed that he's going to go in and plead not guilty. He's charged with 16 crimes.
16 felony counts. His attorneys have called prosecutorial overkill. Right now he's free on bond. He's in that courtroom now, though, and he maintains his innocence.
Oh, completely. So he'll go in, he'll plead not guilty and go beyond that. But to your point, that 16 charges, I'm sure the defense attorney is saying this is extreme. I mean, what the prosecutor has done is taken every single lie and said it was an additional count of obstruction.
In addition to that, you've got that letter that was sent through the mail, and apparently was tied back to Jesse Smollett. That's a federal case, right?
Right.
And that's a separate investigation other than what we're watching today.
Exactly right, because you can have parallel both state and federal charges, and they don't have to.
One could argue that's a more serious matter, could you? Or not?
Conceivably, absolutely.
I mean, you look back at the hours and the days that followed this alleged attack happening in the middle of the night, and I mean, it was an immense amount of resources thrown at this case and this investigation, tied up a lot of the police in the Chicago area. The investigation was huge. It cost a lot of money.
Well, they could seek restitution. And frankly, we've seen that. There is precedent for it, that when someone has done such extreme shenanigans like this, what he's accused of doing, they can actually get restitution for it. And it could be very considerable. I mean, there have been cases in the past that the defendant has had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay back the county and the state for all of the
We had the attorney on for these two brothers, the bodybuilders, who apparently were in on it. They received a check for $3,500 and cashed that. Do they skate? Or could they be charged at some point?
Oh, they're going to be charged as well. I mean, these are all co-conspirators. They're going to be charged.
No chance of level of cooperation. You gave us this and we'll give you that.
That's a great point, Bill. That's probably what they're going to do. They've already started to cooperate. So it's going to be, we'll plead guilty or plead lesser to a lesser crime, but we'll come forward and actually testify against Smollett. It'll be really interesting. Jurors don't like that, though. Jurors look at these plea deals and say, they're incentivized. They've had these plea deals. They're not really telling the truth. So it's going to be really interesting how this is all going to pan out.
We will see it in about 21 minutes, all right?
Yeah.
We'll watch it together. Thank you.
That would be awesome.
Nice to see you.
Great to be here.
Another alert now from the Hill. A lot of moving parts today, folks. The House has now passed this resolution that would make it mandatory to release the Mueller report, make it public. Now, where it goes from here, we don't know. But the Democratic majority in the House has now passed. It's a non-binding resolution, really a statement of feeling or fact about how they feel about that. William Barr, the AG, ultimately has the call here. Bob Mueller does the report, he gives it to the AG, and he decides what and how much is released to the public. So we're waiting on all that, but that's what House Democrats did just a moment ago.
As we await that, Boeing's newest model now grounded across the globe. More on why the FAA is changing course here, not letting...
Senate now, Mitt Romney apparently will vote for that resolution to block the national emergency that was declared by the president for greater border security. He will join Mike Lee, a Republican, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis from North Carolina, and Rand Paul from Kentucky. So that's 6 votes against. Hogan Gitley was with us, 15 minutes ago, Sandra? And he confirmed that the president will veto that resolution, which would mean it would still go forward as the president. So desires for more border security. So we will watch that, see what sort of legal battle ensues.
Meanwhile, on to this. The United States and more than 40 other countries around the world are grounding Boeing's newest model airplane. The FAA initially declining to ground the 737 MAX 8 and 9s, but satellite data showing similarities between those two deadly plane crashes have changed things. Joining us, former FAA Administrator Barry Valentine. Barry, good morning to you. Thank you for coming on. So what was it about this satellite imagery of the latest crash that changed minds?
Good morning. As I understand it, the satellite imagery suggested that the flight profile of the airplane involved in the Ethiopian airline crash bears some similarity to the flight profile of the Lion Air crash, and on that basis, the FAA has determined that the prudent course of action would be to ground the airplanes for now as the investigation continues.
How long would an investigation such as this last?
That's hard to know. Here in the U.S., of course, the NTSB is the organization that does investigations of transportation accidents, including aircraft accidents. And usually they issue a preliminary report a few weeks into the investigation, but the completion of the investigation and the final determination of the cause can take many months. Because this is under the purview of the Ethiopian government with NTSB, FAA, Boeing assisting, it's hard to tell how long that would take. It'll depend on the nature of the information they get, for example, from the black boxes and from what they can determine from investigating the crash site itself. But I would expect it would take some time before they would have a conclusive determination as to cause.
We were almost one of the last to ground these planes. Why do you think it took the FAA so long, Barry?
Up to apparently the day before yesterday, when they got the additional information, they did not have any indication based on the historic performance of this airplane, by which I mean when airplanes are flying, they are constantly transmitting data about the performance of the airplane, about the performance of the engines, its systems. As I understand it, these airplanes have made 18,000 flights since they were introduced into the fleets around the world and logged 46,000 hours. None of that data showed or indicated any particular anomaly or problem with the airplane. And on that basis, the FAA did not have any facts that would suggest that there was a particular problem. Now, with the information they got in the last couple of days, they've determined that, again, the prudent thing to do would be to ground the airplane.
Just one last question here. Yeah, and
sure.
I know that might be difficult to answer, but Hogan Gidley told us 20 minutes ago from the White House that the president was presented a different set of data that convinced him that the grounding should happen. Would that have been the satellite information, or could that have been something else?
That I don't know. I haven't seen any information detailing exactly what information the president received, or for that matter, in detail, what information the FAA received.
In a word, do you agree with this decision, yes or no?
Yes, I do. And it goes back to you make your decisions based on facts. Now that there are facts available to suggest, again, possible similarities between the two accidents, what the FAA has done is the prudent thing to do under the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are grounded for now. We will see what happens. That investigation could take some time. Barry Valentine, appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Breaking news watching the courtroom in Chicago. Jussie Smollett appearing before the judge in Chicago moments ago. This is video now where a judge was assigned to that case. He will reappear later this morning where he will enter a plea on 16 felony charges. And we will take you there live in a moment, right after this. Investigation. We can do Facebook's down.
If you know anybody who's just completely glued to their Facebook, they couldn't believe it yesterday.
Oh my goodness, the message boards were like, it reminded me like one of those old Rod Serling Twilight Zones, you know, when you just kind of stop communication and mankind turns on itself in 24 hours, you know, you want to spark a civil war, just stop the inability for us to communicate for one day and we will kill each other. And that almost happened 14 hours down. Wow. The thing is, there's some controversy on whether or not it was what they call a denial of service attack. Facebook saying it wasn't, but they don't know what it was. So
they do not know.
That I know of. They are saying, though, it was not a denial of service attack, which is the kind of attacks that leaves a lot of people's information open, you know, to the would-be attackers.
There was a lot of theories out there about what was going on. Did you notice those?
A lot. Like I said, the message boards are, you know, you got some pretty crazy folks out there. So Facebook's got their hands full. And you know, people, you shut down YouTube and Instagram, that's it. Forget about it.
In the meantime, they're dealing with these investigations about the data deals. I mean,
this is serious stuff. I mean, listen, apparently it's the Eastern District of New York. They've interviewed 2 companies. About 150 companies entered into these deals to deal with Facebook. And it was sort of they'd have access to data, people's contacts. This is the controversy of Facebook saying they never sold your data. I think it was a game of semantics, up to 150 of these companies, and probably big ones, Amazon, you know, Apple. And so they've subpoenaed 2 of them, and they're looking deeper and deeper into these business practices. So you've got the Eastern District, you got the FEC, the SEC, and then, of course, all these countries around the world also looking very closely at the scrutiny. And then you've got presidential candidates who are saying, hey, let's just go ahead and break these companies up.
Here's Elizabeth Warren.
They are huge, they have market dominance, and they behave like monopolists. And that's a big part of the reason they need to be broken apart. The platforms will still be there. What will be different is that the companies that are selling on those platforms will be in a real marketplace where they compete straight up.
You're not entirely opposed to this?
No, I think that it's going to happen. I think I'm one of these people. I believe ultimately competition will do what they want this to do. You know, in the Northeast, people know the supermarket called A&P. No one else listening to this conversation has ever heard of them, but it was about 50, 60 years ago. They controlled 70% of the food in this country, and there was legislation going through to break them up. I mean, so we've had this before, and whether it was Walmart at one point, whether it was Sears, which is a bankrupt now, you know, eventually there will be authentic rivals that will bring them down. In the meantime, I don't want politicians breaking these companies
Charles
up.
Payne, thank you very much.
Shout out to the A&P, by the way.